Well, hey, welcome to another episode of the Pastors Roundtable. I'm your host, Ryan Latham, and I am here with a new friend who I just met last week on a pastors networking call. And the things he was sharing, I just said, man, we got to get this out to you guys. And so I called him up, and here we are, ready to share a little bit about what they're doing and a little bit of insights as to how they're navigating this unique season of the church. And so, Bobby, why don't you just take a little minute here and just share a little bit about your story? I mean, you were just talking to me a little bit before, and just such a unique entry into ministry. And so just share a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, man. So grew up in the Bible Belt in Nashville, and no church background at all. We were the kids that the neighbors would pick us up and take us to vacation Bible school type thing. Parents didn't go to church. Had an encounter with God when I was a teenager, and turned completely away, became an atheist, agnostic, the whole 9 yards, and ran off to the military thinking that'd be a better start. And man, everything got 10 times worse. Got married, had a kid. I'd studied Buddhism, Islam, Baha, anything you can think of. I studied, trying to find truth. And one day I had a divine encounter with God, where I saw a vision of me preaching, even though I didn't believe in God, and literally, not an audible voice, but kept hearing and seeing the term messianic prophecy, which I'd never heard before in my life, and went back home and Googled it on a 56K modem and heard the whole wind up of the modem and all that good junk, and just saw the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled, and man, it brought me to a place of submission, basically, with God. I told him whatever he wanted, he could have. And me and my wife packed up. We were in Cleveland, Ohio at the time. Packed up, moved to Nashville, because that's where I saw the vision of me preaching, and basically just started serving in a church. And one day the pastor hired me out of the blue with no background, and learned by fire, no training, no Bible school, and no internship program. Just here you go, and learned. And then 5 years ago, transitioned here to revitalize this church. Founding pastor, been here 35 years. He was 74 years old and I was 33. So he pastored longer than I'd been alive. And it was what I'd call charismania world. So you think the whole Brownsville charismatic stuff. I come from soul winning mega church AG world. And so I learned things I didn't know existed, and really just focused on trying to bring this church into a kind of a balanced, missional, spirit-filled church. So man, I've been here 5 years and love it.
That's awesome. And thank you for your service to our nation. Why don't you just share a little bit about that? Because I think that's not everybody has that unique experience. Talk about that revitalization. What was that like, taking over for someone, that had been pastoring longer than you've been alive? What was that process like? What have you done? What have you learned through that experience?
Yeah, man. So I think we'd always thought we'd plant a church. So we were part of a church plant, always thought we'd be church planters. And then I'd had a coffee with a friend of mine who'd taken over a church and kind of revitalized it. At that point, I felt like people are called to plant churches, but other people are called to revitalize churches. Two different gift sets, but still the same kind of concept. And so really started feeling like that was me. Like I really wanted to take something that was dying, and not a negative context, but something that was on the decline, and bring life back to it type thing. And so we felt like that was it. Talked to our pastor and kind of put our name out there, and that church found us. And I would say that church planting is very hard. Church revitalization may be harder in a lot of ways. You don't have you have money, you have a base, but the future is less guaranteed with a revitalization than a church plant. So we came in, 33 years old, thinking everything's gonna be awesome and great, and trying to maintain this relationship with the senior pastor, whose family was very ingrained in the church, and the church had not really seen any growth in years, and told him, hey, this thing depends on your relationship and my relationship. The closer we can be, the more transparent we are with one another, the better this thing's going to be. And it was like, yeah. And within about 4 months, I saw that changing and dramatically turning. And hey, remember, this is about you and our relationship. And it kept on turning. And so that first year, the church is running low fours, and we probably saw, I can count 175 to 200 people that left the church that year, including the senior pastor. Went down the street to a church that was a church split from another church. We kind of filled their sanctuary up for them. But that same year, No lie, we had 200 salvations and 100 baptisms.
Wow, incredible.
So, yeah, it was like God just immediately backfilled the church, which sounds great, but as a leader, you have a bunch of new people. Most of them are new converts. They're not leaders. You don't know who to trust. And so we learned a lot in that first year. I learned a lot just in senior leadership for the first time. And transition-wise, I learned there's a lot of battlefields that you're fighting on, and that most leaders aren't prepared to fight on those. Like I knew there'd be, organizationally trying to transition the staff and team. I underestimated the spiritual side of things. Like I'm a strategic guy, so I'm thinking strategy, and I'm reading this book and that book, and spiritual, there's a lot of undertones that take place. And so guys I talk to that transition churches, that you're fighting on the spiritual battlefield, the organizational, the relational, the financial, the vision. There's so many battlefields, and most people pick one or two and try to win that one battle, and they lose the other one. So just trying to figure out which ones to fight to win. So man, it was really bad, like worst case scenario. But once we made it through it, one of my mentors is R.T. Kendall, who's an author, was a pastor in London, England for years. And the next year he came down and preached for me. And I said, man, I've just been going through hell. Like this has been hell. And I said, man, we lost like this many people, but we're back even. And he said, he said, thank God. And he's 82 years old. Thank God. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm going through hell. He's like, that's awesome. And I said, what do you mean? He said, when I was at Westminster Chapel, after Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones retired, he took over. He said, those type people stayed in my church for 8 years, giving me hell. God did for you in 1 year what took me 8.
Wow.
And it totally changed my perspective to being not bitter, but frustrated to God bless you, God bless them, God bless us. Let's just keep on rolling forward. So yeah, transition's hard, but it is worth it in the long run.
Wow. That's incredible. Now you guys are in Alabama, correct?
Yes.
So you're in a very multi-cultural, multi-generational environment. And so what's that been like as well for you?
Probably the same story. It's so when I was being interviewed, there was a search firm that found us. My wife is Black, so my kids are biracial, 4 biracial kids, and that's just who we are. Like we don't think about that. We don't think we're a mixed couple and this and so when they interviewed me, they said, hey, we're in Florence, Alabama. And I said, well, I need you to know my wife is Black. Like, and oh man, that's gonna be awesome. Like we're a diverse church, and when we get here, and it's not a diverse church. Like they're diverse for their perspective. So where we're at, every church is white church or Black church. So if there's any Black people at the church, they think it's diverse. And I remember it was really awkward. Like at our trial weekend, like all the Black people were ushers and sat in the back, but everybody in leadership, everybody on the platform, everybody else was white. And it was a segregation inside the church. And I was like, man, this is crazy. And so I know we're called to racial reconciliation. And so since then, we just made decisions. We've never bought into the decision, hey, let's put African-Americans in places so we can draw African-Americans. We just preached a gospel of reconciliation and just preached hard truth and deep grace. And we started reaching African-Americans by a lot. And so much, I put tension on the Black churches that were getting frustrated. Black people were coming to our church. So actually the school superintendent of our city came, and he kind of snuck in and snuck out. And I did a funeral, and he was at the funeral. He said, bro, and he's an African-American guy. He's like, when I first came to chapel, he was coming. He said, I came because we were losing some members of y'all's church, and I was checking it out. He said, I was spying on you. He said, but then I just kept coming, man. He said, I loved it. My wife, our kids loved it. He's like, so I'm still a member of that church. He said, but I love what you guys are doing, type thing. And so we paid a price. Like we've had people leave thinking, oh, we a Black church or we a white church now? I'm like, well, if you have to ask that question, you're probably at the wrong church. So it's been hard, but it's been a great testimony to our city. Wow. So our city is very divided. And so the fact that there is a diverse church that's not marketed that way, it's just, this is who we are. It's been a great testimony to our city as a whole.
That's incredible. I love that. I love hearing that. So obviously you're in the same spot as everybody else. The whole world changed, ministry changed a few weeks ago. So you were, last week when we were talking, you shared some things that you guys have been doing. So talk about just some of the maybe pragmatic stuff that you've been doing, like on Sunday mornings, throughout the week, obviously online engagement, some of those things that you guys are doing right now?
Yeah, so we'd always streamed. We didn't stream worship music just because the quality of our streaming was not good. And so we had to quickly adapt, make some investments in some hardware infrastructure to be able to stream our worship. And so we knew that communication is, you have to know your audience. So we knew our people would be in the living rooms on their phones. So we changed our structure. We didn't go to the platform. We started going to people's houses and actually modeling that from other people's living rooms, which I thought went really, really well. And then we started recently really trying to engage more. So we did a digital check-in, which is basically a connect card that just says a toggle box of, hey, I'm doing great. Love you guys. The next one, how can we better pray for you? How can we better serve you? And so we saw our engagement just quadruple type thing. So people are messaging us, man, thank you so much for caring about us. We love you guys. We don't need anything, but thank you. And it's really helped us. And then we've done all the other stuff with Zoom parties and Zoom groups, all that stuff. But the biggest thing we've done is just went old school. Everybody's calling everybody in our church, sending personal text out, weekly emails, just trying to go old school and just pastor people again, which has been really cool. It's been really good for me.
That's great. That's great. Now, on our call, you talked about just because, again, you are multi-generational, multicultural, that you've seen even just how you do online stuff, engagement. You've had to maybe do some things different than if you had just one culture, one demographic. You've had to try and do kind of a variety of different types of things to engage the generations and cultures, things like that. You want to share a little bit of what you've learned or what you're trying?
Yeah, we've learned that that our African American demographic doesn't like online. They want to be a personal experience. They want to feel connected. And so I was trying to, I think the first week I sat down at a table kind of like this and tried to preach sitting down, since it was a home kind of acoustic environment. And then I got rid of the table and started preaching again and trying to engage a bit more. And we saw our engagement kind of tick up again with that and how they were interacting online. Which is good. And plus who we have, the style of worship we do. So we've been doing acoustic worship. We made a decision. The sound studios in town, it's a pretty major recording area. They're all in decline because they can't record. So we booked up 2 days of studio space. We're going to record our worship full band instead of acoustic, get a good video, and we're going to start putting that on our live stream instead to help with that. So yeah, it's a different, so many different types of people. They all respond to different communication style. So
yeah, and learning that on the fly is tough.
Yes,
all right, so you talked about kind of a unique partnership that you guys have been doing with the school systems there. You want to share a little bit about what you guys are doing there?
Yeah, so we have a Dream Center, which is our outreach avenue, which was one of the reasons we came to this church. They called it Loaves and Fishes. It was a food pantry on a pretty large scale. They'd feed 250 families a month, groceries. We've taken that and made that a Dream Center where now we're feeding 1,000 families a month with pretty much almost a month's worth of groceries. And it's produce, meat. And we recently made an investment of a new facility where, so the way it works is they apply for help. They get counseled with, prayer, the gospel shared, etc. Then they get a voucher and they go next door and we have a boutique grocery store. So they actually shop for their own stuff. So instead of giving a handout, we're trying to give a hand kind of up. And so they get their groceries, just like Publix, we bag it, we take it to the car for them. And so that is the bridge. So with that, we're still feeding 1,000 plus families a month. But for county schools, we're doing grab and go boxes. So we're building boxes that have breakfast cereals, breakfast bars, sandwich stuff, little quick meals like macaroni and cheese, stuff like that, that county students can come and pick up and take home. So we do that twice a week. And then we have a connection with the city schools where our Dream Center does the food distribution. We do Circles. Circles is a program designed to move people out of poverty. So if they're getting help with food and they want to get help to move out of poverty, we give them the benefit of saying, we'll give you more food, more often, and better food, which includes steaks, ribs, all types of meat, but you have to go through Circles. So Circles is a kind of a holistic discipleship plan. It teaches them job skills, vision boarding, interviewing skills, budgeting skills, family skills. And so we're trying to move them and we give them these promises of, we'll move you to like 125% above poverty. So that way you're not going to fall back into it. And then we do Dream Center Academy. So Dream Center Academy is focused on 5th and 6th grade students that are Title I, which is the poorest of the poor. And so we take them, there's 20 of them. We have a relationship with our college in town where they send education students to intern to tutor those students with the curriculum from the school. And there's social work interns that then do behavioral training. So every day they would get tutoring with their curriculum, with what they're learning that week. Then they have behavioral lessons or training, counseling, for lack of a better term. And then they have fun activities and food. We feed them each night. So that built this bridge with the city schools. When this happened, we called them, asked if they need anything, since we'd be kind of limiting some other stuff. And so now every day, the city, we don't have to do anything, which is awesome. The city sends out some of their employees with hot cooked meals in to-go boxes. They set up at the Dream Center, and students just drive by, get their hot meal, and go home.
Wow.
And
That's
so we're
incredible.
feeding county kids with the grab-and-go boxes, city kids through the city schools with that pickup location. And it's been really cool to just kind of see how it kind of flows.
That's cool. That's cool. So any tips for somebody that maybe doesn't already have kind of a dream center set up already, food pantries set up ahead of time already? Do you have any tips maybe of ways that they might be able to try and maybe engage in some of these feeding programs, something like that? Some tips that maybe they might be able to do?
Yeah, so the way our Dream Center started, we just met with the city, and the school said, what's the 5 problems that you have that you can't solve? And it came out to be poverty, the poverty, the education. And it wasn't, they said there's plenty of programs from young kids, plenty of programs for older kids. That middle school age at 5th and 6th grade is the make or break moment. So that's why we picked that. And then addiction recovery, which we're working on long-term. So I would call my mayor, I'd call councilmen in the school, say, what are the problems right now that you have? Don't ask them what they need, because they have so many needs, they'll just tell, they can't answer. But what is the 3 to 4 major problems you have that you can't solve? And then build your strategy around whatever that may be. If that's food, it's food. If it's mask, it may be the hospital, you call and ask them. But don't try to create a solution. Just find out what the problem is, then build a solution around the problem.
Yeah, and one thing I believe it was you that said on the call last week was offer how you can help, as opposed to just, hey, if you need help, give me a call. But here's some ways that we can help. Here's some things that we can do. Like you said, what are the major problems? Man, here's some ways that we can help solve that. So let's shift a little bit and talk about virtual teams. What are some things that you guys are doing to communicate within your own team there now that you are all virtual?
Yeah, so we actually could still meet physically. So our staff meet on Monday morning. And so we've kind of been doing a bunch of stuff. But then out of that, they're all doing Zoom parties with their teams, trying to resource their teams. We're going old school with handwritten notes to our key volunteers and leaders, and really just going old school with that. And then, because there's really not a whole lot to do. So we're really trying to train our people out of task towards people. So like first impressions, hey, right now you're not ushering, you're not greeting, but you can still connect with people. And we need you to call these 10 people and just love on them and just connect with them type thing. So that's really our major, we're like people right now. And so that's kind of the way we're managing it.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love that. You're not ushering right now, but you can write a couple notes, right?
Yep.
That's great.
And they have time.
Yeah, they do. So Bobby, as you look ahead, we still don't know, as the time of this recording, which is the middle of April, we still don't know when this is going to end, when we're going to come back to, quote unquote normal, right? But as you look ahead, what are some things that you're saying, man, I think this might be part of the new normal for us?
Yeah, so I believe this season is exposing a lot of things about the capital C church, but also like our church. And so we actually, like the second week after this, I said, look, we just need to spend some time and really reevaluate what is God showing us about ourselves right now. And so we whiteboarded it up, put on a whiteboard. What have we overemphasized on that's not important anymore? Well, Sunday morning, we put a lot of stock in Sunday morning. We didn't put enough stock in our digital connections. We put a lot of stock in creating volunteers. We didn't do a very good job of building leaders and making disciples. Man, we spent a lot of energy on on welcoming guests and getting guests connected. We didn't do a very good job of new believers. And so we were really trying to nail this thing down on what's going to carry over. And so one of the things I think is really going to carry over is maybe not a shift, but a new balance of churches that, hey, it can't just be about Sunday morning. It needs to be about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It can't just be about content. I think content used to be king. I think connection's king going forward. I think people are realizing there's enough content out there. How can we connect better? And how can we use this to connect better? Because we even put it on our board. What are the things right now that people can't do on online church that they could do in a physical gathering? Because they can get preaching, they can get worship, they can get prayed for, they can get digital connect, they can do all the stuff that we're doing. What is missing? And it was things like culture. Like you can't reproduce culture online. It was like physical touch, laying on of hands, stuff, actual embracing and care. It was things that we don't normally, we think about culture, but things that people need. The experience is going to trump the content kind of moving forward. And so we're really reevaluating our Sunday morning and how to make it more experience driven than just content driven, which should be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. And then we're reevaluating our entire group structure. So we realized our groups suck. Like, to be honest, they suck.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, I know there was some church, obviously before this whole COVID thing, but there was, kind of a move of some churches that were intentionally not doing online live streaming because they said, hey, if our people just can get it there, then they won't come, right? So like they intentionally were saying, we want people to come to this live experience, live encounter. Obviously now that's changed, right? But I love what you're thinking there is what are those things that will separate us from, I mean, especially right now, I mean, it seems like people are church hopping, church shopping a lot, right? And so people are kind of like, man, well, if I can get this live experience somewhere else, maybe I will. But what I love what you're saying is, no, you can't get this live experience elements of this touch, this community. And so that's the draw to be here with us in person. I love that.
Yeah, I even told our team when this first started, because everyone just jumped on trying to produce content. How much content can we pump out there? And I said, look, let's not overdo it. This may be a time let the soil settle a little bit. And let's focus on engagement and pastoring. I said, because if it's content, I mean, to be honest, let's just all, let Furtick preach, let Jakes preach, and let's just all step back and let everybody else do it because they're better than us.
Yeah.
So it has to be more than just content. And I think another thing that's going to happen with that is that pastors, myself included, are going to have to look at other avenues as campuses. So we're trained to think the room is our main communication strategy. And so even our online stuff is geared towards, we're going to duplicate this room online. And I think that you're going to look at YouTube as one campus, Facebook as another campus, your online church as another campus. I think it'll take different styles of communication to engage those different areas type thing. And I think that's going to be the biggest change for communicators, is to really learn how to do that well.
Okay, this might be too premature, but what are you thinking? I mean, I love that idea of thinking that Facebook is a campus and not just pumping out the same stuff, and that YouTube is a campus. Man, that's just that's thinking ahead, man. So I don't know, do you have anything more than that you're thinking through? Give me something there.
No, I do know that thinking through the content could be the same, but the style in which you present it will be different. So Facebook is Facebook is where, for us, our older demographic, our 40s and up live on Facebook. It's also the place where people throw their opinions out. It's a weird interaction. YouTube, there's not as much interaction, but you reach a whole nother world. If you think of YouTube as a search engine, which it is, that it's a place where people can find your content. So making it geared towards the seeker more than the interaction side of things. And then the online campus for us has been pretty much just our church people. So it's a place where our church people can land and we can pastor them through that. And so trying to think through Instagram, we haven't tried that world yet, but we know that's a younger demographic, younger world. So yeah, I think, and as a communicator, learning and training yourself that I'm communicating not just to the people in this room, but all these different avenues. And your email, your text messaging, learning how to communicate. Our giving, this may be our largest giving month ever, like ever.
Wow.
And so our team was like, well, how is that? And I said, I think we're actually communicating better on who we are and what we're doing, because we're having to do it in multiple ways rather than just depending on Sunday morning. And I think that's going to be the same, translate that into the messaging, the sermon, communicating the same thing in different ways for greater impact, I think is going to be the key.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. I wonder if it's like you're, because you're communicating so different ways, it's like the percentage of people that are tithing is higher, you know,
Yeah, and it probably is.
not necessarily like the per person necessarily, maybe the percentage. That's interesting. I love that. That's encouraging to hear, man. The time of hearing everything's going down. I love to hear that highest month.
It's
That's
crazy,
awesome.
man. It's super crazy.
I'll take it, right?
We haven't been pushing. We haven't been driving it. We've just been communicating. Like our church isn't a big email church. So if I send out a MailChimp email with 1,000 emails on it, we may get 200 open. But since this season, people are starting to open their email. And so I have not been very consistent in church-wide emails. Now, every Tuesday, I'm sending out an email. Hey, love you guys. Here's what's going on. Here's how we're serving you. Here's what's coming up. And I think that, and just some of our other strategies has, like we sent letters to everybody at our church, every giver, and just said, hey, praying for you. This is a difficult time. If you need us, feel free to reach out to us. We also encourage you to be faithful, because we know God protects. He rebukes the devourer through your faithfulness. And we put in there an offering envelope and an already self-addressed stamped envelope as well. And that is like skyrocketed it.
Wow. I love it. I love it. All right. Last question here. In the midst of all this, what's bringing you renewal in your, you know, body, mind, soul, whatever, man? What's some things that bring you renewal?
Yeah. My body's not quite summer ready, but it is quarantine ready for sure. So, no, like we're part of the Radiant Network. So Lee Cummings at Radiant Church in Kalamazoo, Michigan, where Corey Asbury is one of the worship leaders at. Man, dude, they've been on top of it. So it's a brotherhood. So as soon as this happened, we did a monthly Zoom call every month, always. Since this happened, we did a weekly just to check in. Hey, man, how's everybody doing? What do you need? And that's just been good, kind of having these type conversations of, hey, what is God saying through this season? What is going to move forward? How can we make a difference in this season? And dude, that's been really good. Down moments, I called one of my buddies in the Radiant Network when this first happened. He's in New York, so they already started being impacted by it. And I said, and they actually closed their church. They had to close the church, close the offices, pack up and leave. And I said, man, how are you doing? He said, well, it's kind of like your family. When things are going bad, you tell them, hey, man, you know, everything's going to be all right. He said, then you go and you cry in your closet. He said, I had that moment with the team where, man, hey, dude, we got this. We're going to da-da-da. He said, but then I have my moments where I'm down, which was good for me because I had felt very confident. But our last Sunday service, when I left, it felt like goodbye. It didn't feel like I'll see you later. It felt like goodbye. And so I didn't know if that was like, you know, maybe this is like the end of church. I didn't know if it was, you know, the end of a season. And so having those guys that can kind of share those deep kind of fears and pains with has been really, really good for me.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, thank you, Bobby, so much for sharing with us. Man, just great insights, great words of encouragement, and we're so thankful for it. So any final thoughts for us?
No, man, just push forward. Like leadership is made in crisis. Anybody can lead the ship when it's calm seas. It takes a leader to lead it through rough seas. And so just keep on and use the season as a time of not just trying to survive, but to thrive in the next season. Figure out what's going to be in the next season and take advantage of it.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we'll have another episode for you here soon.
Appreciate it, man.